Welcome to Let's Talk Energy. Let's Talk Energy is a production of the National Energy Technology Laboratory. The Energy Lab is one of the U.S. Department of Energy's 17 national labs. Your host is Joe Culver.
Thank you for joining us today for Let's Talk Energy. Our guest is Carl Bauer. He's the director of the National Energy Technology Laboratory, the Energy Lab. Well, thank you for taking your time to be with us today, Mr. Bauer. Now, I've heard that the National Energy Technology Laboratory, the Energy Lab, is unique among the national labs. What makes it unique?
Well, the National Energy Technology Laboratory is one of DOE's 17 laboratories, but it is the only laboratory that is exclusively about energy in general and fossil energy and renewable energy more specifically. It is also the only laboratory that's both government-owned and government-operated. The other unique aspect of our research here is that our research is not just done within our confines with our own researchers. That is a portion of our work, but by and far, a larger portion of our work is done with industry, other national labs, academia, and institutions around the country and the world. So our unique ability is by working with all these other entities. We have a access and a broader perspective on the challenges that they face as we work on the science and technologies needed to address the future energy requirements and environmental needs.
Now, if you look at the range of energy challenges that we face, could you put them into a group of categories?
When I think about energy, the easiest way I think to try to understand the complexities of energy is to think about it simplistically in three major categories of challenge. Obviously, we have a demand. We need the energy. We need a supply. So one would be supply, and then, of course, the security of supply. If I start using a certain source of energy, will I have an ongoing supply of it adequate to meet a near and midterm and even long-term demand? Then, if that is true, can I use it in a way that will be environmentally acceptable and responsible? So the ability to use the supply is dependent on its ability to be used in an acceptable way environmentally, which is not really up to us to determine. That is done by EPA and the nation, and many different means come in. But then the requirements translate into a technological challenge to use the supply or to determine the supply cannot be used. However, even in meeting the supply and the environmental constraints, it still has to be economically viable. A supply that I can find a way to use but I can't afford to use really doesn't mean it's a supply. Or a technology that works well and treats the environment but is economically unacceptable to the general marketplace and population is, again, an interesting technology but not a useful one.
Those sound like very almost overwhelming challenges. Do you take them on one at a time? How would you address them?
Well, we don't take them on one at a time, although in one sense we begin in one at a time. We seek to understand the supply possibility and the environmental challenges, and we begin to look at how could we access this supply and turn it into a useful form of energy. For example, everybody knows the sun's there, but making electricity out of it doesn't just happen by standing it. There has to be a source of conversion of the solar energy into electrical power. The same thing with coal. You have to take a lump of coal and do something with it to get the energy value of it out. So when you do that, you have a challenge of technically converting something into a useful form of energy and doing that transformation in a way that meets environmental challenges and requirements as such that we do the minimal amount of harm or an acceptable level of performance, and yet then we have to bring in this other consideration. Haven't been able to do that, can I afford to do it? And if you wait to the last minute to do that part, you may come up with an answer that you can't live with. Just like if you just looked at it from purely economic standpoint, you may come up with an environmental challenge that you can't live with. So you really have to iterate amongst those three, and what we try to do is we think of those three circles, those three aspects of supply, economics, and environmental considerations, and we try to get the circles to overlap themselves as much as possible so we have a broader area of opportunity to deal with the energy problem and the solution.
Now, Mr. Bauer, I've heard that you have a very strong interest in science education. Could you discuss that, and could you discuss what NETL is doing to help in the field of science education?
Yeah. Well, that's somewhat of a pet of a project of my own, but it permeates the laboratory, and I think Department of Energy overall is very much interested in education of science and math, engineering, and technical disciplines. Obviously, a large portion of our work is dependent on having talented people who are educated and experienced in working in the research and development of technologies and basic science solutions. And so what we've done as a mission, part of our mission here, is to look at how do we encourage budding young enthusiasts to become actually serious students and scientists and engineers of the future, mathematicians, computational chemists, and things of that nature. So I've done a lot with the staff. Our staff does a lot with various universities, whether it's Harvard Kennedy School of Government or MIT or Penn State, Pittsburgh Plate Glass. We've done some work with them. So there's many entities that we work with to try to work with them at all levels, whether it's at the college and post-college level, as well as working with the schools, the Science Bowl, with the high schools we host in Western Pennsylvania and in West Virginia, out in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and around the country. All these things are ways to try to stimulate people and try to capture their attention and their interest and show them that being an engineer, being a scientist, working in technical disciplines can be rewarding, challenging, and fulfilling.
Mr. Bauer, I understand that the Energy Lab is one of the organizations that will be helping the administration use stimulus funding to get our economy going. What is the lab's role in that?
Our job in this arena will be to help take the money that's provided by Congress and the President and move it forth through competitive actions to the various states and other competing entities. We will run a competition by block grants for states, by competitions to do large-scale projects or developments. It won't be as much on the basic research side. It'll be largely work that is actually going to put shovels in the ground or to build things or to upgrade things or to help people deal with the issues of electricity and energy costs by improving their homes, their insulation, their windows, doors, or state and capitol buildings. And those are the kind of things that we'll be helping to move forward. We're looking at probably in excess of a total between all parties of $10 billion that will be moving forward over these next 3 to 6 months through a competitive process. So we'll be working very hard and running with our hair on fire, really, to try to do this. Our staff will be working evenings, weekends, nights, overtime. We'll be supplementing our staff with additional staff that we're looking to hire and bring on board, at least for the time being. Some of those jobs will continue on for years as the work continues, because the work won't be over in 12 months. It will continue, jobs will be created, and some of them will be here.
That sounds quite impressive. Now, what do you see as down the road for the lab?
Well, we are in a unique position because of being a government-owned and government-operated entity, and because we work in a broad area of energy as compared to more narrow-focused areas of only renewables or only fossil. When we work with utilities or energy companies, we find that most energy companies are not uniquely only one sector of the energy market. They have a diverse portfolio of interests. If you're a utility, you mostly have coal or natural gas, possibly nuclear plant. You're doing renewable portfolio standards, so you have renewable energies. And one of the things we bring is an understanding of these various energy types and how they have a potential to complement each other and work in an integrated manner to improve the overall operating efficiencies of the systems and the corporations. And so as we dialogue and interact with the companies, we can do that. We also have a great deal of numbers of models and technologies that we have developed through the increased emphasis of that work at the lab over these last 4 years. And that is increasingly in demand in the private sector, and so it's a tool. And because we're a government-operated entity, we have legal requirements to protect the intellectual property of others. So as we deal with these companies, we protect their interests in a way that is not always how a private sector entity would deal with it without legal ramifications for them to sign non-disclosure agreements. So there's a great challenge there, as well as the greenhouse gas challenge and the renewable environmental challenge. We fit in across that area in various niches, and we will be able to make marriages, so to speak, take place and be an honest broker between entities as well as a contributor of technological insights.
You're a grandfather. What if somewhere down the road your grandchild came up to you and said, "What does that lab do?" What would you tell her?
Well, what we do, I think, at the core essence is we seek to understand the challenges to the use of energy. We have many sources of energy, as I mentioned earlier. Our job is to figure out how to take that energy to meet the demands in a way that is useful. That could be electricity, it could be hydrogen, it could be a liquid transportation fuel, whether it's traditional from petroleum, or from biomass. So I would try to get my grandson to be stimulated and think this was a neat thing to be involved in. Not only can I do interesting things and have fun, I can make a difference. I can help our country, help our family, help all of us to have a good quality of life and have an economic ability, even take a vacation once in a while. So that's what I would try to get him to think about.
Well, I hope your grandson decides to come along in your footsteps and take us to the next level. So,
Yeah, so do I.
Thank you for being with us.
Well, thank you very much for the opportunity.